Hi, my name is Rebecca Vega-Thurber, and I'm a professor of microbiology at Oregon State University. So, a lot of my family history is what inspired me to become a marine scientist. My father's family and my father himself were from Dominican Republic, and so I grew up spending a lot of time in Dominican Republic on the beaches there as a child. And my father, he was a naturalist, and even though he was a physician as his primary job, his real love was the ocean and collecting creatures and things like that. So through that inspiration, I really became fascinated with marine organisms and what lived in the ocean and wanted to learn all about them. And it was also through that experience that I became concerned about the ocean, because as a child, I would go visit these beautiful places, and in my own lifetime, I saw them get degraded and go from these beautiful reefs that had lots of fishes to ecosystems that were really just algae and sand dollars. But through my research, I've also found that there are places of hope. So despite these challenges that the ocean system has, I'm really hopeful that we can, change things for the better when we work in some places like in French Polynesia or our trips to places like Papua New Guinea. We still see these thriving reefs. And despite a lot of the declines, there are still places holding on. And we have to remember that we can still fight for them and that we shouldn't give up. If I was going to give advice to the next generation of marine scientists, I would say don't lose hope and work hard to fight for what you are interested in and what you want to do. And don't let people tell you that it's not worth it or that you can't do it or there are no jobs in this. It's just not simply true. There's lots of opportunities to explore what goes on in the ocean and to understand how we can conserve it and protect it. In terms of my own background, again, being from a Dominican Hispanic family and being nurtured through that culture, I really gained a sense of empathy and connection to the sea, even though I grew up in the desert. And to this day, when I go out into the sea, I feel that experience with my family, knowing that they too love the ocean. And I'm also married to an oceanographer who has a profound love of marine science as well. And so together we work very hard to make a difference in marine science. I think one of the uniquenesses I bring to marine science is that perspective of being a Hispanic, although I am white. I also have that strong connection to my culture. And I recognize the challenges that a lot of students of color and that scientists of color are experiencing, the discrimination and the bias. And so because of that connection, I feel that I can be a strong advocate and communicator for programs that try to alter these paths. Essentially, what can we do to address bias? What can we do to address sexism, discrimination in our community, and make it so that everyone has access, everybody has the resources that they need to get where they want to go in marine science. There's not one thing that I think has set me back. I mean, although COVID has been very difficult, especially on my students, and watching my students struggle and my colleagues struggle during COVID has been a personal challenge. Hoping that we're coming to the end of it and moving across it, but it's been very hard to watch students lose opportunities and lose the ability to do the research that they're passionate about, because they are the next generation of students who and scientists who are going to make the next big discoveries. I think the hardest thing that I've ever done in this field is one of the projects that we did to explore how reef decline affects human culture and human populations and human diversity. That project called Saving Atlantis lasted a very long time. And I had a young child at the time, and it was very difficult to balance choosing to advocate for marine conservation and being away from my family. And in the end, it was worth it, but there are still days where I questioned whether or not I was doing the right thing. Should I work my hardest to protect the sea, to understand how the ocean works, or should I focus mostly on my family? And that balance has been difficult, and I think it will continue to be difficult. But I know when I see my children's own excitement at the ocean that I'm doing the right thing. I think the moment where I felt the most supported by my colleagues is when we've been going through these challenges these last few years. Colleagues have really been holding each other up. We've really been dedicated to promoting diversity and equity. During the Black Lives Movement, people of color and advocates for diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives have really supported one another and come together to try to make a difference. And I think that's a great thing that we can take away from these traumas that the community has experienced, that together we can make a big difference when we have each other's backs. I think that diversity is important in multiple ways. Diversity provides a variety of insight into new questions. Everyone's experience is important for understanding how the world works. Innovation comes from the most diverse kinds of minds, and together we need to work as a team, regardless of the color of our skin, regardless of our backgrounds, regardless of our sexual orientations. When we come together as a community, we can make the largest amount of change. We can make the best discoveries. And ultimately, we can affect the world to the largest and positive degree. So